These terms, media, journalism, and the press. So let's dig a little bit deeper. What I want to establish at the beginning is that the underlying media system is different from the practice of journalism, which is different from the institution of the press. And if we can create space between these related things, separate them, lift them from one another, define each, and then we can put them back together to make sense of the present moment. So what I mean by the underlying media system is the distribution and production networks writ large, the entire network of media. The wires, tubes, means, and platforms through which all the streams of communication flow, from phone calls to reruns of I Love Lucy, to the daily newspaper, to Craigslist. By the social practice of journalism, I want to emphasize the activity of it. It can result in a market good, it can result in a public good, or it can result in a political good. Meaning people can make journalism happen because it's a business, they can make journalism happen because it's a public calling, and they can make journalism happen because they want to achieve something in the public world. They want to achieve a political end. But the practice of journalism has to run on the media system we're actually using today. If the users move to a new media system, the practice of journalism has to go with them because it has to be current. It has to be of the present, or it has no value. And so the social practice of journalism, the way I think about it, is always moving, always advancing. It just happens to be in an accelerated form today. The American press, however, is a different thing. That is an institution that we Americans created. And the way I think of it, the press is always a country-by-country thing. The press only exists where the laws of that country and the culture of that state make possible the space where you can have a free press. Otherwise, journalism is just an artifact of the power system. To have its own independent life, it needs a free press. So we should always think about the press, country by country. And here in the United States, we should put it in about a 300-year frame, from Tom Paine to Arianna Huffington. So when I think about the press, I'm always implicitly giving it this 300-year frame because that's what needs to go on. So if we keep these terms separate, make space between them, but also define them in relief with one another, we can get a good description of our present situation. Here's what's happening. Changes in the underlying media system are disrupting the economy of news production. This is destabilizing the practice of journalism, the social practice, which includes what professional journalists do and what everyone else who also participates in the practice can do. Releasing a flood of professional anxiety, which is the norm now in many professional circles in journalism today in the U.S., North America, while sending a current of renewal through the American press. So, as your keynote speaker deliverable, You know how consultants always say, here's the deliverables? So intellectually, this is the deliverable. The present situation in a sentence. Changes in the underlying media system are disrupting the economy of news production, destabilizing the practice of journalism, releasing a flood of professional anxiety, and sending a current of renewal through the American press. That is what's happening right now, as best as I can determine, as a kind of historian of the present. These changes are still in motion. Every day I write about them and track them, and so do many others who are plunged into this motion. Their outcome is highly in doubt. We don't know how the story is going to end. It could end in the wreckage of huge institutions like the Los Angeles Times, or not. But these changes are bringing destruction and misery as well as new possibilities to journalism. Let me give you an example of what I mean. One of the extraordinary things about the newspaper business today is that it's much smaller than it was. So if you go and you visit a metropolitan newspaper today, you go to a space that is actually where the workspace has contracted. But they're often in buildings that were made for a much larger organization. And so the difference between the number of people who are actually working there, the number of journalists there, and the space they have is actually the departed ranks of the press, the people who are no longer with them, the people who lost their jobs, the people who are not actually part of a working press anymore. And that sense of devastation, professional devastation, is very palpable. So when I say destruction and misery, that's what I mean. As well as, and I tend to write about this part more, new possibility to journalism. Now, as all of you probably know, news and journalism are not the only stack that runs on the underlying media circuitry, right? What I mean by a stack, that's a metaphor taken from software, is applications run on top of other applications. The World Wide Web is an application that runs on top of the internet. Your browser is an application that runs on top of the World Wide Web. CNN.com is a site built for your browser. iReport, which is a division of CNN, the citizen journalism wing, is built within CNN.com. So if you think of this stack of, or layers that are necessary to bring us our journalism, when the underlying media system changes and grows and just rewires itself as it has with the digital revolution, many other stacks tremble at the same time. So we just talked about the shaking of the stack in journalism, but in book publishing, it's even worse because of the way the underlying media system has made it so easy for books to move electronically rather than as physical objects, right? And if we look at the music business, you see even more disruption. Or if you look at a field like consumer photography, people taking pictures, this, right, has completely unearthed and changed and transformed the practice of the social practice of photography. So it's not just news and journalism.